Hello, my name's Karen Burke. I'm a Gestalt psychotherapist and I am at the Manchester Institute of Psychotherapy with Bob Cooke, the founder, who is a transactional analysis. And we just thought we'd spend just a few minutes talking about books that have been important for us and would be important for trainees. And also for members of the public that were interested in our own disciplines.
Great, so I'll start off with TA.
Okay, that's great, Bob.
Okay, I've been in TA for, 28 years now. We run an institute, as I said, where we train people to be TA therapists. So let's start off with some books for the public and for trainees. So probably the best place to start is the Eric Berne books. Eric Berne was the originator of transaction analysis psychotherapy. Died in 1970. Heart attack, Carmel Beach, San Francisco. And he was a prolific writer. But his most seminal book was called TA Psychotherapy in 1961. Where all his major concepts were first delivered. It wasn't, however, the book that made him famous. The book that made him famous was a much shorter book and was looking at repetitive patterns that humans follow and how mental health professionals can analyse these behavioural patterns in the service of cure and helping people communicate and have more healthy relationships. And this book, wow, I mean, it just went into the hemisphere. And really, I think it's the book that he's most well known by.
And that's called
Games People Play. First came out in 1964. Stayed as a bestseller in America and the UK for decades. I like the book. I mean, I think it's talk about 2012, I think it's a bit dry now. And I think many authors in recent times have brought that book alive more than he did. But it is the traditional book which all TA trainees will have to buy. So TA trainees, that book I've just talked about by Berne, which is called TA Psychotherapy, Games People Play. Two other books he wrote. What You Want to Say After You Say Hello, 1969. Principles of Group Treatment. You work with groups. I think that was 68. So those are the sort of Eric Berne books. Which he did another book, which was sort of finished really after he died, which was called Sex and Human Numbing. Which is another good book. As TA trainees, I suggest you get all of them. And then, of course, as with all these real sort of models that develop, other authors have written about concepts and often more accessible to the reader. And that's why I said I want to come back to the TA Today book, which is written in 89, which is a far more accessible book than I think those Berne books, and is the first year training book in our institute. So I'll definitely put that on the list. A couple of more, another one by Patricia Clarkson, who was a well-known TA therapist who died recently, who wrote a fantastic book called Transaction Analysis and Integrative Approach. Another book which I also like by a TA therapist who became well known for an association on integrative therapy started by Richard Erskine. He wrote a book called Beyond Empathy, which I think is a very good book for looking at the transcripts of psychotherapy and then analysing them. In terms of real lane books on TA, two books I think. One is TA for Toads, which was written about, I think about 6 or 7 years ago, and it takes that story of, The Willows,
Wind in the Willows.
Wind in the Willows, that's it. And it's a very sort of nice little accessible story, but puts TA principles over quite well. And there's a book that came out in the 1970s, which again is very accessible to the reader, called Born to Win, by Muriel James and Dorothy Youngwood. And that's very accessible as well. Two very accessible books.
And interestingly enough, I think of that particular book.
Which one?
The Born to Win. And when I see that on the internet, such as Amazon, it's actually described as a TA stroke Gestalt book.
Do you know why that is?
Tell me, Bob. Tell me the story.
It's Muriel James, who is the author with Dorothy Youngwood of that book. She was a real devotee of Eric Burke. You would say, if you think of her, she's still alive, she's about 90 odd now. And she's espoused TA principles for a long time. But one of her close friends, Dorothy Youngwood, who also did some training, I think, with Eric Burke, she really immersed herself for quite a while with quite a lot of Gestalt principles. I'm not sure whether she trained with Pearls, who was the originator of Gestalt psychotherapy, but she certainly really espoused those principles. And if you look through that book, and it's a very accessible book, a lot of the exercises they give comes from the world of Gestalt psychotherapy. And there's a reason for that even more, as I think about this, is that Eric Burke's focus of his early transaction analysis was to strengthen the adult ego state. It was very built on that concept. Okay, turn down the parental interjects, but let's develop a robust adult. And when people said, what about looking at the unconscious or childhood history, for example, he would suggest that you either went to the new Gestalt psychotherapist, which has just been formed with Pearls down the road in Colmel, or back go to psychoanalysts. So he focused much more on strengthening the mature adult DAs that you are part of you, rather than looking at the unconscious histories of the... Now, Gestalt psychotherapy is far more focused, as I understand it, as well as looking at fragmented, cut off parts of the self, but more in terms of what Eric Burke would call the child ego state, the historical and conscious parts. And therefore, I think Muriel James and Dorothy Youngwood wanted to try and put in a synthesis of the two of them that would compass really a holistic approach of all ego states. I don't think that's been given as a reason, but that's how I see the book.
That's right, that's your reason, No, thank you for that, Bob. That's interesting.
It's a great book because it's so easy to read. I really like it. Anyway, in the world of Gestalt psychotherapy.
In the world of Gestalt psychotherapy, the Bible, almost. The Bible, almost. And of course I'm a Gestaltist, therefore there can't be a Bible.
Well done, I'm sure.
However, the book that all trainees will be expected to read and to understand and to know the concepts from is Gestalt Therapy. Published in 1951. It was by Pearls, Goodman and Epperlein. And this wasn't Pearl's first book, however that was the book that, when it was published in America, actually shot him into fame.
1949?
1951. His first book was actually written in 1941, which was Hunger, Ego and Aggression. And he actually wrote that with his wife when he was at Laura Pearl, and when he was in South Africa, after they'd fled the Nazis, they went to South Africa, and that book was actually him trying to disprove or talk about his own theories in disagreement with Freud's psychoanalyst.
We also about 1950, so what modern books would you say took those ideas?
Well, certainly Pearls actually did write quite a lot. There seemed to be a block. There seemed to be. He was busy.
When did he die?
He too died in 1970.
Oh, right.
He died, I believe, of a liver disease after a very short illness. He did.
One thing I was thinking of books, when I think of Gestalt psychotherapy, more modern writing, so perhaps you can put it in context, is the writings of Gary Yontov.
Yes.
Which is more modern, if you like. But I think.
So you're thinking of dialogue, awareness and process? Yeah. And again, that is what we consider a core book. And Gary Yontov has been a significant writer and was someone who not only wrote extensively himself, however, encouraged others to, because he felt that Gestalt psychotherapists actually had not published enough. And he talked quite passionately about the need to publish.
That's right. So in 2012, I was just thinking, if you were to go and sort of recommend to people watching this channel, and they went into a bookshop now, what modern book would you suggest somebody interested in learning about Gestalt psychotherapy would be useful to sort of buy?
Yes. I think if someone who hasn't had a psychotherapy background,
that's what I mean,
because
really.
As you say, just like the Burns original books, you would now consider to be dry. I think there's something for somebody to read. Is there are books that Gestalt for beginners.
I was going to give you a couple. That's what I was.
And I think it's actually a good representation of both Pearl's life.
Do you know who wrote it?
Do you know? I do know, and I can't think.
I know you just put it in Google.
That's right. Yes. And I was also thinking actually about who the gentleman who actually was the cartoonist for that book was a very well-known Gestalt psychotherapist too. I want to say it was Daniel, and I may be wrong. So I won't.
But I know you can put that into because you see, I think it's really important for people like Gary Burns, the early books. They aren't so easy to read.
Well, certainly the later books that Pearl wrote, and again, similar to what you said, some were published after his death, are actually easier than the earlier ones. However, there are writers today who have continued, and I mean, certainly going back a long time, certainly to the early 70s, Violet Oaklander wrote a book called Windows to Our Children, which is a core book, not just for Gestalt psychotherapists, but for therapists that work with children. So I think there is still a place for those classical books. However, there are a number of newer books, as you said.
And there's a whole series by Wendy Dryden, which came out, and I think the Gestalt one is written by Patricia Clarkson, who I mentioned earlier on in the TA process. And the TA ones are written by Ian Stewart, and they're called things like TA in Action or Gestalt.
That's right,
And they're very nice.
They are.
Readers.
They are, and certainly Patricia Clarkson in that. Gestalt Counselling in Action, that book is called. Is a very clear look at Gestalt, and I would consider that the Gestalt equivalent of your TA today.
Oh well, there's two.
Yeah.
Okay, there's some books. And of course, if you really want to take it further, you can contact me or Carwyn, and we'll give you a more detailed book list. Hope that's been useful to you, and goodbye from me.
Thanks very much. See you soon.